Chronicles of Ancient War, Miyamoto Musashi. Diary of a Dirty Orphan, How I Became Japan's Deadliest Swordsman. My name is Miyamoto Musashi, and at 60 years old, living alone in a cold cave on Mount Iwato, I can finally admit the truth. I was a monster disguised as a hero. I killed my first man at age 13. It wasn't an honorable duel, it was brutal murder. I crushed his skull with a piece of wood until his blood painted the dojo walls red. I watched his body tremble for a full 3 minutes, mesmerized by the grotesque dance of death. When people speak of me as Japan's greatest swordsman, they don't know that I never bathed for weeks at a time, that I stole food from children when I was hungry, that I slept among corpses to test my courage, that I drank the blood of a fallen opponent to prove to myself that I was more demon than man. This is my account. Not what the monks will write after I'm dead, but the dirty, bloody and brutal truth of how a savage orphan became a legend by killing 60 men with his own hands. If you have a stomach for the truth, keep reading. If you prefer clean and noble heroes, put this book down now. 13 years, The Birth of the Demon. I was an ugly kid. Seriously, I'm not being modest. My face was asymmetrical, my body gangly, and I smelled of mud and buffalo sweat because I spent entire days practicing swings in my adoptive father Munisai's field. Arima Kihei came to our dojo one summer afternoon. He was 30 years old, a professional samurai of the Shinto Ryu school, and laughed when he saw Munisai's dirty bastard son holding a bokken. "This brat is your successor?" he sneered, spitting on the ground. What a pathetic joke. Something snapped inside me. It wasn't anger. It was deeper. It was the recognition that I was inferior, insignificant, nothing, and it filled me with such icy fury that my hands stopped shaking. "I accept your challenge," I said, my voice strangely calm for a child. The duel lasted 17 seconds. I counted each one. Kihei lunged forward with perfect technique, a classic downward strike that would have split my skull in half. But I wasn't where he expected. I rolled to the side, a cowardly, unsamurai move, but effective, and while he recovered from the empty blow, I climbed onto his back like a wild monkey. With the bokken in my right hand and my left arm wrapped around his neck, I hit and hit and hit. The first blow shattered his left temple. I heard the crack of bone. The second opened a deep gash above his ear. The third, fourth, and fifth. I honestly lost count. I kept hitting him even after he fell, even after he stopped moving. Munisai had to pull me off the body. I was covered in blood. His, not mine, not a scratch, a perfect victory. But that night, alone in my room, I couldn't sleep. Not out of guilt or remorse, but because I'd enjoyed it. The sound of the skull cracking, the feeling of absolute power, the exact moment his eyes stopped focusing, and I knew I'd stolen a life. At 13, I discovered who I was, a born killer. 16 years, the escape from hell. 3 years after the first murder, I committed my second, and third, and fourth. The Battle of Sekigahara in 1600 wasn't glorious, it was a slaughterhouse. I was fighting for Ishida Mitsunari's side, the losing side, as I discovered too late, and during 3 days of carnage, I learned truths no swordmaster teaches. Truth 1. Real men don't die like they do in training. They cry for their mothers, try to hold back their own entrails spilling out, pee their pants, and beg for mercy that never comes. Truth 2. I was exceptionally good at killing. While others hesitated, I was already moving on to the next target. Without thought, without emotion, pure predatory instinct. Truth 3. War is the only place where monsters like me are applauded. I killed 6 men the first day. I remember every face. The first was a boy my age, maybe 16. He was vomiting from nervousness when I found him. My blade entered below his ribs and pierced his lungs. It took him 43 seconds to die. I timed it, watching his eyes lose focus. The second was a seasoned veteran. A real duel, that one. It lasted almost 2 full minutes before I found the opening and slit his throat. The spray of blood hit me in the face. I can still taste the metallic taste when I close my eyes. The third tried to surrender. I killed him anyway. The fourth, fifth, and sixth were battle confusion, quick blows amid the chaos of thousands of men screaming, dying, killing. When the battle ended and the Tokugawa side won, I should have been executed as a traitor. Instead, covered in blood and holding two broken katanas, I walked through the field of corpses until I disappeared into the mountains. For weeks, I lived like an animal. I ate whatever I could steal or hunt. I slept in caves. I spoke to no one. But something had changed. In Sekigahara, surrounded by industrial-scale death, I discovered my purpose. If I was going to be a monster, I was going to be the best monster there ever was. 17 to 28 years. The decade of blood. The next 11 years were dedicated to a single mission, to challenge and destroy every famous fencing school in Japan. Not for honor, not for glory, out of psychological necessity. Each victory proved that I existed, that I mattered, that my miserable life as a dirty orphan meant something. Each slain opponent was existential validation painted in red. I kept meticulous count. 60 official duels, 60 victories, 47 deaths, only 13 seriously injured, 0 losses. Some highlights that columnists prefer not to mention. Duel Top 7, age 18, Kobayashi Taro, Jujutsu Master. I woke up at 4 a.m., hid near his house and attacked him when he went out to urinate before dawn. I buried my katana in the top of his skull while he was still unzipping his pants. Official duel? Technically, yes, I had challenged him the day before. Duel the 15, age 20, Ueda Ryohei. This one still embarrasses me to this day, not because I killed him, but because I enjoyed it so much. I cut him 17 times before delivering the fatal blow. Small cuts, nothing fatal. I wanted to see how long it would take for him to pass out from blood loss. Answer, 8 minutes and 34 seconds. Duel, Baxid 23, age 22, Tsujikaze Tenma. I didn't use a sword, just a broken boat oar. I wanted to prove that weapons didn't matter. I crushed his left collarbone with the first blow, his ribs with the second, and finally his skull with the third. His students vomited watching. Duels number 44-47, age 25. The Yoshioka brothers. The Yoshioka school, the pride of Kyoto, a centuries-old tradition, and I exterminated it in 3 separate duels. First, I killed Yoshioka Seijuro, the main master, with a bokken. Total humiliation, he with a steel katana, I with a wooden one. I slashed his forehead with the first blow, blinding him with blood, then broke both his arms before the fatal blow. Then I killed his brother Yoshioka Denshichiro. That duel was clean, just 11 seconds from the first move until he fell with a split skull. Then the entire school, what was left of it, vowed revenge. At Ichijoji Temple, 70 men awaited me. It was no longer a duel, it was a planned execution. I arrived 3 hours late, on purpose. I wanted them to be nervous, tired of waiting, wondering if I would show up. What followed was a massacre. 17 minutes of violence that destroyed an entire dynasty of swordsmen. I killed 12 men that night. I seriously wounded another 30-40. The rest fled. My favorite technique, wielding 2 katanas simultaneously. While blocking with my left, I kill with my right. Simple, efficient, deadly. I walked out of the temple covered in so much blood that I looked like I was wearing a red kimono. It wasn't my blood. 28 years. The duel that changed everything, Sasaki Kojiro. Even now, 32 years later, his name makes my hand tremble. He was everything I wasn't. Handsome, refined, technically perfect. His Tsubame Geishi, returning swallow technique, was considered impossible to defend. 3 cuts in such rapid succession, they seemed simultaneous. He was also 189 centimeters tall and wielded a katana with a 109 centimeter blade, the longest ever made. Drying pole, Monohoshi Zao, he called it. It could cut a man in half with a single blow. Kojiro represented everything samurai society valued: elegance, technique, tradition. I represented the opposite: brutality, improvisation, dirty efficiency. Our duel was scheduled for Ganryu Island at 8:09 a.m. I arrived at 10:30. Intentional, of course. I wanted him to be furious, impatient, out of the perfect mental center his technique required. But there was another reason for the delay: fear. For the first and only time in my life, I seriously considered not showing up. Kojiro was genuinely technically superior. In a clean duel, pure skill against pure skill, he would probably win. So I decided to do what I always do: cheat. Pause here for a moment. If you had to describe Musashi in a single word after hearing his story so far, what would it be? Monster, genius, survivor, coward, hero. Write in the comments the word that best represents Musashi to you. I'd love to hear how each of you interprets this complex and contradictory man. Now back to the story, the duel that would change everything. I arrived by boat, rowing myself. During the journey, I carved a bokken from a spare oar, 110 centimeters long, 1 tim longer than Kojiro's drying pole. Small advantage? Yes. But small advantages decide duels. When I finally stepped onto the island, Kojiro was visibly irritated. "Musashi, are you really afraid of dying?" he shouted. I smiled. I didn't answer. I just walked calmly across the sand, my long bokken resting on my shoulder. The duel lasted 3 moves. Move 1. Kojiro lunged forward with Tsubame Gaishi, 3 impossible slashes in blinding succession. His blade sliced through my hachimaki, headband, so perfectly that the 2 pieces of fabric floated in the air in slow motion. But I was no longer there. I had thrown myself forward and downward, betting everything on a single upward thrust. Move 2. My bokken hit Kojiro under the chin with enough force to break his jaw and cervical simultaneously. Movement 3. He fell. I remained standing. But here's the part I never tell anyone. Kojiro didn't die immediately. He fell onto his back, paralyzed from the neck down, his eyes wide with shock and agony. His mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water, trying to speak, but only producing bloody gurgles. I watched for 47 seconds. I timed it by the sun, so I did something that I'm ashamed of to this day. I leaned close to his ear and whispered, "Perfect technique doesn't win. Only survival matters." He died with his eyes full of tears. I walked back to the boat as his disciples came running, shouting revenge. I calmly rowed away, never looking back. That night, alone in a cheap tavern in Kokura, I got drunk until I passed out. When I woke up, I vomited for 20 minutes straight. Not because of illness, because of achievement. I had defeated the best swordsman in Japan. I was officially undefeated in 60 duels, and I felt completely empty. 29 to 60 years. The slow awakening. After Kojiro, something broke inside me. It wasn't regret. I still don't regret the deaths. It was worse. It was realizing that winning meant nothing. I spent 16 years proving I was the best killer in Japan. So what? People still avoided me. Women covered their noses as I passed. Children cried at the sight of my face. No daimyo wanted me as a vassal. I was too good, too unpredictable, too wild. I spent the next 31 years wandering, not wandering romantically like a wandering poet, wandering like a dysfunctional beggar. I slept in abandoned temples. I ate whatever I could beg or steal. I went weeks without speaking to a human being. My body developed wounds that never healed properly. My odor became so bad that dogs avoided me. But I started doing 3 things. 1. Painting. I discovered that the same hand that killed 60 men could create beauty, mountain landscapes, birds in flight, Zen simplicity. I never sold any of them. I just painted them and left them behind. 2. Sculpture. I carved Buddhas out of wood, hundreds of them. Each one was meditation in physical form. While I was carving, I didn't think about duels or death. 3. Writing. At 58, I began Go Rin no Sho, the Book of 5 Rings. Not as a sword manual, but as a disguised confession. Now at 60, living in this cold cave, I finally understand. I was the greatest swordsman because I dedicated every moment of every day for 47 years to the art of death. I had no wife, I had no children, I had no real friends, I had no home. I sacrificed literally everything on the altar of a fundamentally destructive ability. Was it worth it? I don't know. Wrong question, maybe. The real question, if I could go back to being 13 and choose a different path, would I? Honestly? No, because this cursed, lonely and bloody life produced a truth that no monk or philosopher could teach. There's a terrible kind of freedom in being such an efficient monster that even hell respects you. The last words. It's cold here on Mount Iwato. My breath freezes in the air. Old wounds hurt more every day. I'll die soon, probably before spring. I'm not afraid. I killed 60 men. I wounded hundreds more. I destroyed families, dynasties, centuries-old traditions. And do you know what haunts me the most? These are not the faces of the dead. I've forgotten most of those. It is remembering the ugly and dirty 13-year-old boy holding bloody Bokken who looked at Arima Kihei's body and felt pride. If I could go back, I would hug that boy. I would tell him, "You have terrible talent. Use it to create, not destroy." But I can't. All I can do is leave this account, not to glorify my victories, but to warn. The path of the sword leads to 2 destinations. 1, quick death by superior blade. 2, slow death by endless loneliness. I chose the second. I won all the duels but lost the war against myself. If you're reading this and feel the same hunger I did, the need to prove your worth through violence, stop. Now. Be an artist. Be a carpenter. Be anything but what I was. Because in the end, after all the duels and all the glory, here I am, alone in a cave, with no one to remember my name with love, with nothing but memories of the men I killed and the man I could have been. The sharpest blade in Japan, rusting alone in the darkness. Miyamoto Musashi Regando Cave, Mount Iwato, winter of 1644. He died 6 weeks after writing these words. His body was found sitting in a meditation position, still holding the brush.